Hello, brewery fanatics. This is Joel Geyer back with another interview for the Badger Beer Report. And today we are going way, way, way up north to the beautiful town of Boulder Junction. And with me today, I'm going to be talking with Ian and Tracy, who have been working very hard to open up a brewery, Boulder Junction Brewing Company, in their community. And this is one we've been following for a while. And we are very excited here at the Badger Beer Report about their progress and what they are going to bring to the Northwoods. So first things first, Ian and Tracy, thank you guys so much for joining me.
Appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation with you and talk about our little story going on up here.
Yeah, well, speaking of story, can we kind of start with your guys' background? How you kind of decided to start a brewery, what those pieces kind of looked like, and just the overall process for you guys.
You want me to take this?
You can start
Sure.
it, yeah.
So we met in Northern Virginia. I lived in Northern Virginia for about 27 years, working as a federal IT consultant. Got in the craft beer scene up there, and it's pretty good in Virginia. There's a lot of really good breweries. Tracy was brewing at a local, our neighborhood brewery, the Lake Ann Brew House. You want to talk about how you got into that?
So the owners of Lake Ann were longtime friends of mine, Jason and Melissa. And Jason had been a home brewer, and we'd been having sharing beers with them on summer beach trips for quite some time. And they, same type of thing. The town we lived in, the theme for the town was live, work, play. So they lived there and they wanted to be able to work there. And so they bought a small, it was previously a
Thai restaurant.
Yeah. And so I got involved because they did most of their remodel themselves. And so I got involved with the remodel. That's when I got my Cicerone because I also, I started working in front of the house, serving beers at the bar. And then after a couple of years, and I had been home brewing, and after a couple of years, the head brewer, Jason, asked if I wanted to apprentice and brew on the bigger system. So, and at that point, yeah, I kind of was ready to not work front of the house. And because I also, everybody that worked there, we had a day job. We brewed at night because it is it's such an expensive area to live in. So it was nice to come from my crazy IT sales job during the day to brew at night. And it was, you follow the recipe, you follow the process, you get the result you expect, which is nice because I didn't have that in my day job.
So one day I was performing quality assurance on the other side of the bar as a customer, making sure that the product was flavorful. And she was on the other side of the bar brewing. There was a very small area. It's a 2-barrel system, tap room only. No, the self-distribution laws are just now getting worked on in Virginia. So their brewing area was literally right there. And when you brewed, you often had to, well, typically that's why they brewed at night, because you have to pull stuff out of the brewing area and put it into the tap room in order to fit. You have to wheel the 2-barrel mash tun outside to get the spent grain out and stuff like that. So anyway,
we usually didn't brew when we were open, but
yeah.
It was, I think it was Thanksgiving time, and we were, we had a couple of events coming up where we were going to be taking beer and stuff. So we had to brew while we were open.
So we met there. And when we started hanging out, just sort of got to the top of the conversation of, what do you envision for your future? And she didn't want to do IT sales. And I had been in consulting for 25 years. And I had always wanted to open a brewery from like the early 2010s. And so I started homebrewing with my buddy, Kevin Walker, and I was not good. I was not, one of the batches that I brewed literally exploded. The bottles blew up on me. And so I said, you know what?
I'm better at the drinking part too. So, right. I've done the brew, I'm much better at visiting the breweries and sampling the product.
Yeah. quality control, man. It's all
Yeah,
about.
exactly.
So I said, I thought at that point, my dream of opening a brewery someday was done until I met her. And she's like, I'd love to brew full time. And I said, well, would you ever want to open a brewery? And she said, no, I don't want to run the business. And I said, well, guess what I want to do? So we have a nice division of labor here. And then deciding, okay, we want to open a brewery. How does this look? Where is it going to happen? We wanted to do a pretty significant life change and not open a brewery in Northern Virginia because, like she said, it's very expensive cost of living there, and you can't. The model that we want is a community-based tap room. We're not looking to go big and huge distribution. We're not going to be competing with New Glarus or Lakefront or that type of thing. So we thought, okay, we're going to have to move to do this. What's the story? What's the connection to the place? Because that's usually where success happens, is you have a story of why you're there. And I had been coming up to Boulder Junction since I was 2. My grandfather bought some property north of here, built a house. So we spent summers up here. I went to camp at Camp Manitouish right in Boulder Junction. So my connection, I've always come back to this place no matter where I've lived in the country. So it's always felt like home. I've always wanted to live up here. And this was just perfect. Once she started coming up here, she grew up in a rural area in central New York outside of Syracuse. So this isn't any kind of shock to the system of moving from very densely populated Washington, D.C. area to, oh, you have 900 people in your town with 2 stop signs and that's it. So that's kind of how we decided on our location. And then we started looking for properties. And in 2021, we found property for sale right on Main Street, which is what we wanted to be right there on the main drag in Boulder Junction. It was called the Blueberry Patch. It was a retail store. The proprietor was retiring and the owner was selling the building, and we bought that property for its location, but with the idea that we would be able to renovate that building in order to set up a brewery and a tap room. And as we got into it, both our general contractor and architect said, this isn't going to work. You can't retrofit this building. It is so far out of code. You got 2x4 construction, no vapor barrier. It's so far out of code. It's going to cost you more to bring it up to code than to demolish and start from scratch. And you still will have problems, mold, water issues, and that's a non-starter with the brewery. So that set us back quite a bit in terms of our planning and where we were in our scheduling with things. And so we had to start the design from scratch, demolish the building, and go from there. So that's kind of how we got to this point in time.
Yeah, well, I mean, and so for those who are familiar, obviously, I think it doesn't take, a genius to figure out the name, because Boulder Junction for the town. But for folks out there that haven't maybe seen your logo, there is a train on the logo, and I know that plays into it. So can you guys explain how you kind of what the significance of that is to the community?
Sure. Well, first of all, my daughter designed the logo, so kudos to her. And
shout out. There you go.
Her. Yeah, appreciate to Dr. Abigail Brown. She just graduated with a PhD in human design or human
behavior.
Design and human behavior. That's right. And the train is why Boulder Junction exists. Back in the late 1800s, the logging industry started up here. Beautiful virgin pines and other types of wood. The train companies built tracks up here in order to get the wood out. So the lumberjacks, all the Paul Bunyan lore that started back then. So that happened. That pretty much went through the early 1900s. And then people decided this would be a great place to vacation. But guess what? There were no roads up here. So people from Milwaukee and Chicago and Madison would take trains up here. So that's how folks discovered the beauty of the Northwoods, how it became a great vacation spot for folks down south. I think the last train in Boulder Junction left in 1938. So it's been an awful long time since we had actual trains or train tracks in town, but those areas still exist, and there are snowmobile paths and bike paths and stuff like that you can still go and see where the trains came. But yeah, Boulder Junction would not exist without the train and the locomotive and all the things that it enabled people to do up here before there were roads.
I love those kind of stories and backgrounds, because whenever I visit a brewery, that's one thing that I love hearing about is its ties with community, the inspirations behind all of that. And as someone else that, I may live now Milwaukee area, but I also grew up in very small towns, about 1,000 people, one in Wisconsin and one in Iowa. And so for me, I'm always really excited when a small community gets a brewery, especially when it's a community that has not had a brewery and is now getting their own. What has the response been like in Boulder Junction, and what will having a brewery mean for the town?
It's been really positive. People are super excited. People, I think it depends. Usually after people tell us how excited they are to have a brewery in town, that's the other thing that they say is that like it's definitely going to be a business that'll bring more people to town, bring more events to town. Like they like seeing, not only is there our construction, there's also new construction going on across the street from us, that's going to have some commercial space, and should hopefully bring some new small businesses up. So people are very, very excited. And I think the other thing is that people usually when people talk to me, because right now I work at another small business in town, the Aqualand Ale House, because they have a huge variety of beers
20
on tap.
taps.
Mhm.
And people are either like, people usually ask, oh my gosh, what do they think about you opening a place like you're going to be competing? And I have to explain that we're a small town.
Symbiotic.
Businesses support each other. Like we want the more the different types of businesses that we have, the more people, the more places people have to go in town, the more they're able to have different experiences, enjoy different things. So I said we definitely fully support each other. And it's also because a lot of people will think that because they're an ale house, they must be a brewery.
Mhm.
And they'll be like, well, you brew what beers on tap are yours? And it's like, well, nothing actually gets brewed here. There's no, and they're like, no, but you're a brewery. And I'm like, there's actually no brewing equipment.
Yeah.
We don't
Mhm.
brew anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We really wanted to be the first brewery in town, which is why we started this planning for this back in 2018 and actually incorporated a LLC in 2021. And it just seems like a town that should have a brewery. And I think folks are excited to have that, a place of their own to come hang out. We want to be, the place where folks come, have a couple pints, chat. Our sort of, what do you call it? Theme. Welcome is welcome.
Our
kind of
tagline
is welcome home to great brews and kindness. So we want to be that place where folks come and just enjoy each other's company. And we don't, kind of looking at today's climate environment, there's not enough kindness in this world. So we want to be that place where people come and hang out and have a good time. And I think the locals are very excited about that.
It's kind of
that's awesome.
Traditional pub back in
Mhm.
in the in the UK.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's what you've seen. A lot of breweries that have opened have taken that kind of approach where it's like you said, there's not many breweries that are going to be able to come in the last couple of years and all of a sudden become lakefront or
Right.
even more of it, or an even more extreme example, New Glarus.
Yeah.
So it is about providing that community place for people that don't have that. And I love that, as I mentioned to you guys before we started recording, I have some distant families that lived up in Boulder Junction. So I have made the trip up there many times in my youth. It's a beautiful place. And I do think that it definitely deserves a brewery, as you pointed out. So following up on the location, I know you already kind of talked about that, the challenge that you initially had, but then starting from scratch essentially and being up there in Boulder Junction, what kind of other challenges and opportunities have kind of came along with building a full brewery from the ground up in a more remote part of the state?
One of the biggest challenges we had is that we're on well and septic. And when we started researching this and started planning this, every time I did a search for how to start a brewery on septic systems, everything said, don't do it because it's very difficult. But we were determined to do this. And my brother is in wastewater quality treatment for a firm in California. And he gave me some ideas, and So we found a couple of firms that are pretty cutting edge in terms of wastewater treatment. The problem with brewing if you're on a septic system and you're brewing, the effluent from the brewing process is 15 to 20 times more potent than typical domestic wastewater in terms of its biological oxygen demand, which is the ability for it to absorb oxygen and basically break down the nutrients and the waste that's in there. So we started talking to these companies and decided to go with a firm called NRL out of Ontario. And they have what's called a membrane bioreactor wastewater treatment system. So we basically will have a filtering system right on site that the wastewater from the brewery goes through. Then we actually took it a step further.
Wait,
what?
Let's clarify. It's just the wastewater from the brewing process.
True.
It is not any other wastewater, because we've had some rumors pop up in town. It's not any other wastewater from the actual building. It's only from what I'm brewing with.
And we're not reusing that. So we're closing that wastewater loop, dosing it with ultraviolet treatment, so we can reuse that water for cleaning and
for non-potable
uses, cleaning and cooling and things like that. So we aren't going to be reusing that to brew beer. So we basically close the water loop, which is pretty important. Water is the most essential ingredient. We're right there on Main Street, and so we want to make sure we're taking care of the aquifer below us and maintaining a resource. But to get that approved through the state was an Herculean effort, and we knew it would be because we're the first in the state to do this. I think only second in the country. Paradox Brewing in New York uses the NRL MBR system as well.
Well, there's a bunch in California. There's a
Well,
bunch
the
of
wineries.
breweries and winery. No, there's some
they're breweries now?
Yep.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So when presenting this to the state, the DNR and the DSPS, they really had never seen anything like this before. And if it's outside of their checklist box, it's check boxes. They're gonna say, hang on, I don't understand this.
It'll go very slow.
Yeah. And they want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. And so we knew this. I've worked for various governments for over 25 years, and I know that you have to have patience with the processes that they have to go through. We ended up I was listening to the New Glarus podcast, and the host was interviewing their head of wastewater treatment, a guy named Will Holthausen, and he was talking about their membrane bioreactor system. And I had a eureka moment saying, if they've got an MBR system, then certainly the state has approved it before. So I reached out, and by the grace of goodness, Dan Carey approved them to come talk to us. So, and Will actually has a family place up here in Presque Isle. So he came up super enthusiastic for what we're doing and really helped us connect with from their MBR system is very different. It's much larger. They treat their wastewater so it doesn't overtax the sewer system right there in New Glarus, and the byproduct waste they basically take and spread on a local farm, as fertilizer. So, but he said this is the company that we worked with, the engineering company that specializes in permitting and compliance, and connected us with them, which is how we hired them to get us through that process of that approval. And they eventually did that. And that was a very long pole in the tent. We basically demolished the building, poured the foundation, and hung out for about 5 to 6 months while it went through this very arduous and slow approval process. But hopefully now that we've done that, the next brewery or company that wants to use this technology has a little bit easier path forward. So it's essential for us to have this. Otherwise, we could not. We're on a very small plot of land right there on Main Street. There's no way we could have a septic field large enough to even begin to handle the brewery waste. So that was a particular challenge. And the weather is a challenge. We started construction in June and spent an awful lot of time. You might have seen our recent video that we posted on Facebook and our YouTube channel that did a time lapse from June to May. That whole first half of it is below ground plumbing, which when you look at it, you're like, what's going on? They're not making any progress, but that's the lifeblood of our, we're moving liquids. And so our plumber, Howard Brothers, really made sure to do that right. And then we finally got the concrete poured, I think, in October. But then our general contractor and the construction guys worked through the winter on some very cold days to get this, done. And there were days it was 20 below. You're not going to be out there working. We didn't have walls closed in. It wasn't insulated. It wasn't, it was still had an open roof on one part. There were weekends when Tracy and I would go snow blow the tap room so that the guys could come in on Monday and not have to do that and just start working. So, that definitely was a huge challenge. And just in general, we're remote. So trying to get the contractors and subcontractors in very high demand, especially the good ones. And our general contractor, Shaw Building and Design, is one of the best up here. They rebuilt Gooch's north of town a couple of years ago, and they've got great relationships with the subcontractors that they know are going to be dependable and do high quality work, which is what we wanted. And sometimes it takes a while to get them on the schedule. So, schedule delays are inevitable, and the sequencing of things and sometimes getting supplies. I mean, we almost ran into the situation where we might have had to delay shipment of stuff because of the road restrictions that happen up here on the county roads when it's during April and May, when it's, or I guess it's March and April, when it's thawing, and high volume of heavy duty trucks can really tear a road up real quick. So don't allow it. So,
well, I mean, that's, I just want to say, as someone that's been to over 1,400 breweries across every single state, I have heard a lot of stories. I don't think I've ever heard of anyone snow blowing a tap room before. So that is a first for me. So I guess I can put it, we were talking about a checklist and check boxes. Yes. I didn't know that was a checkbox, but I can now go ahead and put a little X in it.
It is. I think we did a post, one of our Facebook posts has Tracy literally snow blowing out the window and from the tap room.
Well, and I know something that's important, because obviously in a way you've already kind of talked about this, but I know the environmental side of this, what was important for you guys throughout this build. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So I think obviously the biggest feature is the brewery, the waste and the wastewater treatment, because obviously your biggest components of in making beer are water and grain. So we definitely wanted to be able, that's part of the reason why we decided to close the loop on the water, so that we could reuse that water and not I don't think we ever would overtax our well, but it's environmentally sound. The back half of the building where the brewing equipment is, like that, where the actual brewery is, that roof is at the pitch that it is and faces south, so that at some point we would love to get solar panels to power part of the brewery. I've been talking with other breweries and trying to make connections within the agricultural community around here, because I want to, be able to reutilize the spent grain from the process. We may even take some stuff and provide it to, like one of the local bakeries or something, to make some spent grain goodies out of. That's all still being discussed, but definitely the environment and our use of the environment and how we look at that, because it's very important up here with the lakes and the woods, trails and stuff in the woods.
Yeah, 100%.
That's why people come up here. So we want to maintain that and help be good environmental stewards ourselves to set the right example.
Absolutely. Well, and kind of speaking, we've mentioned the Northwoods quite a few times, and the fact that it is a tourist draw, and it has been for a very, very long time. As you said, people were coming up in trains, many, many years ago. So with it kind of being a tourist destination, though, the different parts of the year, as you have pointed out, are extremely different, though. are you guys planning on kind of catering to people, both local and visitors, and kind of different ways depending on the season? Obviously winter versus summer is going to be drastically different for you guys, I'm sure, both with beer events, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, just looking at the surge in demand in the summertime, that is where the bulk of the brewing will happen. And when I was putting together the business plan and trying to do projections, Bill Roy, from our friend from Sumner Brewing, actually gave me 3 years worth of brewing data, so I could see what that demand curve looked like. And yes, it's a huge surge in the summertime. But yeah, it's definitely a sort of a dual approach to the business of making sure that we are providing stuff for our local supporters that are going to keep us going through the slower months, as well as designing programs and catering to the tourist groups that are either in the summertime, the fall fishermen, and even the snowmobilers and ATVers in the winter. Once the difference between this winter and last winter in terms of our snow were night and day, and the number of people that were up for snowmobiling just absolutely crushed what happened last year. So we depend on that a great deal. One of the things we're doing is we're putting together our mug club ideas right now. Actually, we're building our own custom app through Tapwise. I don't know if you've heard of Tapwise.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yep. So we'll be able to basically market our memberships through that, and we'll have different levels. So we're going to have an annual program for those that are here year round and want to take advantage of that. That's called our Lumber Mug Club, or Lumber Mug Society, or Lumber. Yeah,
that is Lumber Mug Club.
Lumber Mug Society. No, that's the association. Okay. So the Lumber Mug Club, or Lumber Mug Society, and then we've got we'll have like a 30-day version for those that are just coming up for a while and want to take advantage of that. It'll be pretty much the similar benefits that you would get from the annual, just bite-sized, lower price.
Yeah.
And use it while you're up here. That's our Log Roller Club. That's the club. And then for those really difficult months in February and March and April,
sometimes April,
we're going to have what's called our Legion of Mud Month Superheroes Mug Club. And the mud months are those that when you're getting that thaw and the ice isn't thick enough to go out, and you can't ski because it's mushy, and you can't skate, and so they call that the mud months up here. And so we'll have sort of a 2 to 3 month membership that'll get you some really good deals and try to entice you into our tap room for that. So those are the types of things we're doing to cater to those different markets. And
Legion of the Mud. That sounds like a superhero group or something.
Legion of Mud Month Superheroes.
Yeah, it's going to be like
superheroes to get us through those months.
Yeah, I love that. That's really fun. I absolutely love that idea of having the different types of, not just levels, because you have levels of sponsorships and stuff, but like having it be dedicated to the different times of the year, I think is really, really cool. And then so we kind of talked about the differences in the year, but then just talking in general, kind of an overarching idea, what type of experience are you hoping to craft for visitors once you are open?
It's the kind of place, like I said, we want to be the Cheers. We want to be the place where I can't wait to go hang out there because it's such a warm vibe. So, our tap room is going to be warm. It's going to have a look and feel that's sort of both, retro, old school, but also up to date and new. So sort of going off of that railroad theme, a lot of the things that we have will be sort of relics of the railroads that were up here.
Very cool.
A lot of old photographs of what Boulder Junction was back in the day. This is kind of a really cool feature. The foot rail underneath the bar is we actually found a place down outside of Wausau that had just ripped up. It was an old feed mill, and they had just ripped up all the railroad rails that were there. So I went down and brought back 24 feet of that, and that is going to be our
Love it.
At the bar. The bar, a lot of the wood in the bar and the bar itself, it was made from wood that we salvaged from the old building that we had to demolish. So there's
Perfect.
going to have some of that look and feel to it. So we want it to be, it's kind of a nostalgic place, but also a new place.
Yeah.
And where people can just everybody knows your name type of thing.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what I love it. Like I said, those are some of the questions I always ask when I'm visiting breweries in terms of, even with a new build, you guys are obviously still taking a lot of a diligence to include these parts of the community and, and have it be part of that experience. So I actually love that. And, we've been talking for a while here, and now we have to discuss the main show, which is the beer itself. So Tracy, I know that this is going to be in your wheelhouse. So on your website, I see that it says that you primarily will be brewing true to style. So I guess, what does that mean to you specifically? But then, are there certain styles of beer that you plan to focus on? And will there be any flagships? Sorry, I know that's like 3 questions in one. So just take them in whatever order.
So in terms of style, I mean, you have your traditional ales and lagers. Obviously, I'm going to start with more ales because they take less time and they take up less space in the equipment, so that we can have, opening in the summer, you need more turn. So I'm going to have that. In terms of then within the style of ale, I have brewed everything from a blonde to a barley wine. So I will always have a variety on. I will not specialize in just IPAs or just hazies, or because I feel like that, to me as a brewer, that's something that's frustrating when I go to an establishment and I prefer malt forward beers, but I drink pretty much anything. But if I'm go somewhere and I, when you go out, you kind of have it in a thought of I would like to drink this. And then to go somewhere and not, it's all IPAs, or it's all IPAs and hazy IPAs, and no, there's no darks, there's no reds, there's nothing like that. So I will always have a variety on. And where I brewed in Virginia, we always did that. We always had a variety. I will also, and this part of this comes from my apprenticeship with our head brewer. He was a beer judge. So he was crazy about to style. And if I suggested a new recipe and wasn't clearly able to call out from the style guide what style of beer this was and where I was going with it, he wouldn't even consider letting me make it. So I think sticking to style, and there's been lots of trendy things like milkshake IPAs, pastry stouts, or imperial aged stouts with 15
the smoothie sours.
Yeah. Yes. The 40 sours. Right. And in terms of, and because I've had a lot of people that have come in and said, well, you have to have a sour on tap, or I'm not going to come in. And I will have a kettle sour. I'm not going to, it's not going to be a ton of because I don't need to completely contaminate my system, and I don't have room for 2 completely separate systems. So you'll get your sour style, but it's not
Berliner Weisse.
The base will be like a Berliner Weisse, because that's the traditional sour. So and I think the other thing too is a lot of and one of the things that we always did for front of the house too, where I worked before, the ability to educate consumers on, and help them find something beer that they might like if they're not normally a beer drinker type of thing. And obviously in the beginning we'll have NA options, and with well, with Wisconsin law, I can't have anybody else on tap or ciders or anything, wine or anything until I reach a certain volume. But yes, as soon as we reach that volume, we plan to have other options, because obviously there's, people with celiacs that can't drink beer. There's people that just don't like beer, stuff like that. So we want to be able to accommodate anybody that comes in, but then also kind of help people understand why, like the why, like why I love beer, why I think beer is important, like what, that type of messaging as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so then are you kind of planning on, especially early on, just like rotating through different styles and different options, and then depending how things do, then bringing back ones that maybe sell or are more popular based on the time of year and stuff? Is that kind of what your plan is?
Yeah. I think we'll always have, like I said, we'll always have a dark on. We'll always have some sort of an IPA on. Mm-hmm. We'll always have some
lighter, beer.
Something really light,
cream ale or a blonde.
But then, yes, I'll throw in seasonals, because yes, I've already had people tell me that I have to have a pumpkin beer, things like that.
I've been surprised at how many people in Boulder Junction want to make sure that we have a porter or a stout on. You think, Wisconsin, you think light lagers, but the demand for a dark porter or stout.
You're the one that's been talking about the winters up there. I mean,
but they're talking. They want it year round.
Yeah, they want it year round. They're like, give it. Yeah, so
up here, they don't advertise it, but they whisper in our ear.
That's great. That's great.
So, and we're gonna have a lot of fun too with the beer name. So we're celebrating the heritage of this town, the people that were here before us, the places that make this place special. So a lot of our beer names are gonna have local references, but either to places or things. Like if we do a Doppelbock, it's going to be the Junctionator. Mm-hmm. We do.
Don't give away our names.
There's our big festival in August is the Muskie Jamboree, and they used to do a Muskie Queen, and we know the woman that was the very last Muskie Queen here in Boulder Junction. So we're going to name a beer after her. And there was the very first Muskie Jamboree. They did not the very first one, but the very first time they did the Queen, they also did a Muskie King. And this guy, his name is Jeff Long, and he recently passed away. And it was just a long time, just solid, stalwart member, always investing in the town, always trying to build Boulder Junction. And so we're going to name a beer after him called the Muskie King, and donate some of the proceeds to his the fund that they have in his name that's going towards additional town projects and stuff like that. And so we're going to have fun with that, and people will be asking, well, why did you name it that? And so we're going to have the stories to go along with that, those names as well.
That's awesome. I love it. And I love, the approach with the beer and everything. I hope that I get to come up and try it at some point. I want to give you guys both a chance, though, to kind of just any other little tidbits of information that you want to include, almost, or a summary, essentially like a kind of an elevator speech, if you will, for Boulder Junction, why people should come and visit once you guys have your doors open.
Well, there's a book called Up North Wisconsin, A Region for All Seasons. Mm-hmm. And the little ditty that they have in there really kind of sums up what Boulder Junction is all about. And so if I could read that.
Absolutely. 100%.
We reference this in our business plan and in our pitches to the banks and stuff. And so it says Boulder Junction traces its history to when trappers and traders made their way through the area in the late 1700s. But the first permanent residents didn't put down stakes until the late 1800s, when logging became big business. When the railroad arrived in 1903, the landscape, as if on cue, began to change. With it came a steady, albeit somewhat slow, growth of resorts. 1927, the town incorporated and was named for the intersection of two prime lumber companies on Boulder Lake. Today, the town has about 1,000 permanent residents. Luckily, Boulder Junction, 10 miles south of the upper Michigan border, has escaped the strip mall building frenzy of other Northwoods spots that many tourists flock to. Muskie fishing is the primary target for those making the trek to the area's pristine lakes. You won't see a lot of hoopla advertising, theme parks, or recreational activities. Instead, downtown Boulder Junction offers a few nice, rather upscale shops, and a retreat-like atmosphere that appears untarnished and undiscovered. The townsfolk are friendly too. It almost seems they have nothing better to do than to make sure you have good memories about their chosen place. So that kind of sums up the feel of the town and why people love coming up here. And now you'll get to drink a beer brewed right here on Main Street as well. So
I mean, yeah, the way you were describing the town, I mean, it sounds like a perfect fit for a craft brewery. I know that's what you guys you kind of mentioned at the beginning. And I think that really ties it well. Like that is all very, very just wonderful to hear. And I'm excited for you guys. Can you shout out where people can find out more information about you guys, website, social media, all that kind of stuff, if they're looking to follow along? Because I'm sure you've been posting throughout all of this. And I know that you're hoping in the next, coming up here in the not too distant future to be able to be open. So if people want to follow along, where can they do that?
Sure. Our website is Boulder JCT Brewing Co., Boulder Junction Brewing Co.com. And same handle for Facebook and Instagram. And we just started a YouTube channel, so we'll be putting up some of our videos there. We did a drone fly through of the construction at one point over the winter, which was kind of cool. That's up there. We have the full 24-minute version of the construction time lapse and the condensed 8-minute version of the construction time lapse. But we're going to be doing some other videos that talk about our philosophy, brewing philosophy, and kind of, why Boulder Junction, that type of thing. So a lot of things we talked about today, we'll be doing some videos to get out there for our followers.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you guys so much. This has been a lot of fun. I'm just thrilled for both you guys and the whole community, Boulder Junction. I know Greg has also talked about getting up there. I hope that I'm able to get up there at some point in the future. I would love to be able to try your guys' beers and check out what looks to be is going to be a very just gorgeous tap room and space for the community to come together. But yeah, unless you guys have anything else you would like to add.
No, really appreciate the time and would love to meet you and Greg in person in the tap room, pour you a beer someday.
Absolutely. Well, folks, make sure that you go and follow Boulder Junction so that you can be aware of their opening, but also just their story in general. And always, whether it's where you're visiting or where you're living, be sure to drink local everywhere. Cheers, everybody.